Maybe they were the Madame Junction, Chadon, Don Jimbo, Nebru, Central, Mandara, Geno, Jano, members in the Sawan, depending on Kayan, Kajan, by Yeros, you get one the Makayan, but the Dotan Gentleman, the big widget to be a song and the hill. Sadan Lamamadon, Mamajio, Don Jason, also Jenson, the Javan, Sanjison, Rabdeshan, the Vigiva, and the Dajagitan Michunation, and the Hiyash. Kanda, Joshetan, Jitana, the Yamajo, Consul, and the Tombichu Yichan, baby, and Yamanduba, the Hiyash, like a don, the Don of Janka, German Don, Megan, and Don, Conjita, Gajazam. Tamche kade dage chudando. Ya, ta ngasu ranga chorab jewa tani chidang sonchi nyen gyaba tela yankir ngasu nyamdan zomba tela o chahi shu.
So this is our fourth day to be here, and being here with you all, I would like to say Tasdelik.
Ta tani ngasu kharsan sheya di dom rawachi shuna. Kharsan tso di jiba tsama se di dayang dala teni kibi hiba chik re se ni. Drishas arda tobi hiba chik re se ni. Te shiyo re.
So if we have to summarize what we practiced yesterday or what we learned the day before, it is about the indirect valid cognition. And looking at the correct signs, we can know or we understand the indirect valid cognition.
Ta gyamsan yang dala teni se wang diga pena kharsan nga su shiwa na lo la ki che hyun ra wo te kajik ma yimbi dala teni matawa nga su phongwa tawa te matawa yimba ha ko wa te ra wo te la ta ta nga dala teni dosha sar da to se pek tani na ten ra wo chi la ko len ko re.
So when we talk about the reasoning, one of the main learning that we had was understanding the momentariness. When we understand the momentariness as an impermanence, we understand the form as a momentary and impermanence. That's what we call the correct essence, correct sign of essence.
Ta nga su phong ma ta wa yimbi gyamsan te kajik ma se te ko kyo re. Tende yon diga phong kajik ma yimba te chokchi trab se de tak trab se de re. Phong khana kajik ma yimba te.
So when we talk about the aggregates to be momentary and understanding that the Fengpo or the aggregates, which is impermanence itself, shows that relevance to the subject.
Tene kajik ma yinna mata ba yin gowa te jikip segre, kyaba segre, tere. Tero yana kajik injur rogo re sedi ta tene takpa chik yensa kanya ka marwa. Kajik injur rongka chikpa chini takpa sedi ka jura mewa nindu gowa chik yensa kanya ka marwa. Tende yana di kajik Yodrova Amjing Rova Te In Savi Jila Matawa Maton Sayo Maresi O Tikoa Te Tanda Jikip se Nangati Te Chabasena Daure Teor.
So when we say this form or aggregates is momentary, then the momentary and the impermanence is same. So when the fungbo or the aggregates is impermanence, that shows that is momentary, and we can know it as a chokche, or which is relevance to the jechap, forward pervasion. And when we understand that the body or the form is impermanence, because of impermanence, there is changing in the form. Second to second or momentary to momentary, there is a change. When we understand the form is being changed, that's what we call, or that understand is forward pervasion.
Chur samba changi tenchik se de takyangda re seni zuo de she yore dela tene jeba samake yore se kharsang she ya de dom rawo de ni re.
So yesterday also we talked about the three correct signs. When there is a three correct signs, then that shows or that the object is proved to be the correct. So seeing that three signs, we understand the object to be proven or object to be proved. That's how we understand. That's how we understand the cognition.
Ta ti jeso khatsang kare se de marmu bi tak kap de la kansa ka dag me ba de repeat de shire.
So yesterday when we talk about the correct sign of non-observation, we talk about the name and the body.
Ti kaula kansa se de lu dang sem ni ge dang la pa ta sha ba lu dang sem ni nyam de cho do ba chi la pa ta sha ba za ma do kansa se chi he do na me ta ba per na ko ba kar na ni drum ja bi ko ba chao se de yang shen na ko ba kar na ni le lo se ni ge me ba chi ba yin ba wo de khar san shi re.
So when we talk about the individual, we say this is I, but the so-called individual is the collective group of mind and the body, or the consciousness and the body itself. There is no separate I without the consciousness, or there is no separate I without the body. When this both combines, then we give a name to it, so-called I. For example, yesterday we gave an example of rope, where we said that there is white rope and the black rope. But when we combine this rope, we say it as a multicolored, or we give a name, different name. But if we check it, or if we examine it, there is only either there is a black rope and there is a white rope.
O te tawi kansa ka dagme te ha yaku chikko ni te la te si gom nyam len ona teni jima tonye tang shakya chenpo teni kare gom jam na yang nga su ting hon la dagme se te ha ko ni teni ya ramba jantan ro ona te miksa ki jala tokpa kiya dang teni la pe pen ka yo sari.
So when we meditate on the selflessness of the nature, of the selflessness of the individual, then that can be our great Mahamudra practice. And if we practice that selflessness, then that can be helpful and beneficial when we do the practice later on.
Sanji chomdan de dasha la chu song ka la nga su tin de song ya chi ro kande song de se de ga sona mamba tawar do se de ga merge ba te so pha Tamo, Tani Pankasha. Parta Dana Dobershisi, Dame de Tana Pakasha. Parta Tama Tajikondoba Seondi, Tene Tat Tamche Kani, Tartubi Nilu Dani, Simjanga Jiti, Yaramji, Ramji, Mamban Zari, City, the Yamling Natri. La Sanji Chumda di choose on the Tambo Sona Mamba, Mergeva so do, Sacham the Tendison, Tinibatella, Da Meba. So da de Paka de so, Tamatella, Da Metson. Tamatella, then Rubatam said down Trava.
And when the Buddha gave his teachings to the beings, at that time, first teaching, he said that we have to accumulate merit and eradicate whatever wrongdoings that we, wrong conduct that we act. And the second practice he asked us to do is to understand the nature of selflessness. And the third one is to understand or to be free from the mental appearances or the mental complexities. So his teachings, he gave a teaching in this way.
Da Kansaga Dame Tana Pap Chavi Jesus, Kari Kanditana Pekuyo de Nasu Tavarambachi Yankanalola, Chugi Dame Tana Babi Kavla, the rich sonre. Rikpana Shentongan the Chuchen Semkin Turna Yamba, Mason Tondu and so Chazan Semkin Turna Yamba res on it, Tamchago res, the Joshari. Dela Johnson Marco Yon Kavla, Mepa Tansha, Penangaso Mil Rai Omaro, or Mirat Avachik, Mason Tondu yet is so then Temarto, Muni Yovachik Mare Sonyaga. Data when do visuals and dance go or the
So, and about the selflessness of the individual, jewel ornament of liberation, where the Thirpa Rinpoche again, where they said that whatever we see outside is the mental image, which is the mistaken view. It is just like seeing the horn in the man's head. Even though there is no head, but still we see that because it's our perception or sense of seeing.
The Kadiris only that Zoo Dra Sangasun Tonduya, Tunduya, and Deso, Sosola, Nawa Zamre, Sony, $1, Desonguri.
So, why he said like this? Because all the forms and sounds that you hear is just for the sake of appearance that we see those things.
The nature on the Tate Sosola Handuyaga Nawa de Semka Daniana, Sem Koraya Rajin Gitokari Senari, Don't Tamba Chokari City, De Mare Sonya Tela. Young Tavarambashi Yankanalola, Jonjuk Long Trani, Dina Hisha Yaniba, Meber Hiba Ming Mechi Ni Son. Hisha says Mayona, De Toshiki Hiba Seji Yonsayo Mare Soni. Or De Yang Ma Gibachin Sondua.
So, if one says that everything is appearance in the mind, then there must be a question. If there is no appearance, then does the mind really exist to see those things? If there is a question like that, then again in the jewel ornament of liberation, he states that if there is no perception, then there should not be a perceiver as well.
That Kaptela 열 당 10이 당라 요비 타데 까네 디 제서 되네 가서 살아해 도하 장네 무번 점바 숙당 잡아데 우면 전에 대위 경나 런 손네 된 탄이바 우메 던 점바 대요 까고래 손네 되네 마야 레슨 세나레 데선 세나레 카히마 기바치니 손도와 사라이 도하 세디 응거래 다 공ஞam거 무퍼는 점바 치트네 요래 무퍼는 점바 축당자와 됐어 뭐 요래 된도 요래 삼는 건도 던져 된다와 그랬어 딱 모멘트 점바 대위 겨나더니 음보래서
So as we said that objects does not exist in reality, that in one of his melody or the gur of the Saraha, he said that if someone takes the phenomena seriously, then they are just like an animal in a way. But if someone is there who doesn't really believe nothing exists, then he is even worse than that.
어때래 지원데 티 캅도 그 타바른 뭐 지견라 데스 로조 나나 단다 인결돼서 약고 인치 땅나 배 탈견데 약고 요래 송도 근데 용원데 배 약고 요사를 송도
And if you wish to practice it in a details, then you can read a book called Jewel Ornament of Liberation. There is a detailed description about it.
아주 샤체 말는 거 나나 열라 티비 열매 샘스 나서 드네 말 송거 요바 대당 단디 송탄데서 돈다 찍바 창도
Searching one.
샤체 말음요
Chakchamolam.
샤체 말은 좀 뭐도냐
In Mahamudra Molam, there is a more detailed discussion about it. Excuse me. Hello. Sorry, I'm not understanding the sound because it's a little egoistic.
단디 된적소
La, dixarala.
말이 저 샤체 말는 거나 소저 버티 알아 아예 뭐든 되잖아 된디 저래 다 가서 된디 전에 다가 maybe 돈세데 단라 팝고야 그 전부 연바돼서 사만 암드레가 나올라 다단다 가서 제가 참마샤바 값스바도로 되니 가서라 대전 콜위네라 코리아가 기초로데 nga 삼바데 세바데 차다요레 했으니 송거요레 다티 세바데 문점비 까라 아니 대வர் 결과 암동하라 마저 직진 도바나 나고 냠비 로강데 샘찬나다 한치기 있으니 nga kibochi yona trambika yona nga dupochi soso dupochi yona nga dupote machona trambika tela nga samba lochi ranjeng lewe nga tela semchen la tawe hanki seteres nga so korwinilan di jani dela tene nga so korwinilan korkyore songota tendi songyore.
So this is according to the Pramanavartika Sutra. It says this is very important to understand about the selflessness, because everything, or we are always going in this circle again and again of this samsara is because we have the mindset of clinging to the I. When we say I, then we feel or we always want to be happy, and for that we want to avoid the wrong thing happening to us, and because of this we go again and again in circle with all our karmas.
내리 직송을 디나 달라 원쳐봐 대서 때는 코를 겨르세니 되네 다 세지요레 전 델라 때네 되네 세바데 레오나 코르니리 자완이네 타레요 말에서.
So when there is a strong concept of I or clinging to the ego, then there comes a great desire. Then as long as there is a desire, there is no way out from the cyclic existence.
내가 나저 다 세티 요레 자용이 까라 되네 잔세치 요레 자용 거로 근데 요노데 달라 세바당 되네 잔라 다 나라치요 노자용도 된디 잔네 되네 셰당 대선 정용 거래 세네.
So when we have the strong perception or a strong clinging to the I, then there is a idea of the others. Then when there is a strong of I, then for the sake of I or for the sake of me, I do whatever it takes to make myself happy. And for even if I have to go and harm others, we do that because there is a strong clinging to the I.
다 차단 이보세에 요데나 되네 니바 탐제 델린 정거래 세네. 다다 당의 용들리 니바 탐제 정원결 세네.
So when there is a desire and there is anger, then that brings all the negative actions or the afflicted actions.
다 다음에 봐대 하고 소나 양 차만 남들나 가리 소르세디 나신 통화 매번은 가양 달라 차마인스 달라 세바 매번 대원도비 원규만 소네 다 매바세디 하고 소나 되네 나 삼네 세바디 용고 말해서 세바디 매 소나 되네 대원도비 원규만 땅알라 기보시 조나 나도 보마조나 삼야게 되네 차단 돼서 매바 차로레스 노데소.
So in understanding or knowing the selflessness of nature, according to the Pramana Vartrika Sutra itself, it says that if there is no idea of self, there is no idea of desire. And there is no idea of, I want to be happy, I want to be, I want this, I want that. There is nothing as such.
당이 때 키라나 띵은 랍다 마송 이나 다 갑도 랍는 저거 이제 싸움도 페나 단다 당선 세대 빵 차위 다 좀바데서 간디 지요르 세디가 다 좀바게 페나 잘라다고 페나 추구다고 다 공세다고 된디지 그에 상나야 소소라 꾸마꾸이 니바테 답변나 돈바 깔라 마실렌지 판바세요. 오 된된 정거 말해. 가르레 세디게 다 좀바 이 투길라. 온딩이레 삼바티요 말해서니 된 들어와나 된디 송요리. 다 좀발라 잘라도 된디 꾸소나 되니 꾸 판바세 된 정거 말해서 건설의 콩기전은 네 삼비 다가든 선바디 요 말했어.
건설이 렌나 소나.
말해라. 콘수자니 메잠바 꾸이나.
Okay. So for example, if the one realized being or Dachompa, then even if we take the things from them or they steal the bowl or the arming bowl from them, as they don't have any clinging to the ball, even though we steal, we may not get the negative result of it because they don't have the idea of mine on the object.
대 호프 그 간이래나 된디다 삼바지 용거로 Yinayang, Da Chomba Tesu Tuksum Jirtante, Soso Lamungonde, Nasundawena Nga Sambachiro, Din Tsavla, Da Chomba Tesu Nde Sambatausi. Tende Marto Nga Sambati Yongo Samare.
So it might sound strange that even if we don't have a negative karma, but as Dachumba or as the realized one, they don't have a clinging to that object. For that reason, they never say this is mine, so that does not belong to them.
Kore Sidi Da Chomba La, Tene Ngere Ngala Surchi Yona Samba. O de Ngala Tende Mashona Samba, Tende Yo Mares. De maybe Chane, Tene Kongo Kuzula Pena Zandeng Chenda with Tende Shokinish Chu Shashishinado, Chochin Tarida which Shogadana, Kongo Ngone, Ngala Chikchison going to Yo Mares, they are some of them than a song. Chatabishina Shotin.
Consular Tiki For that realized master, if as they have no clinging to their own physical appearance and also the belongings, even someone is hitting them with an ox or hitting them with a knife, they don't consider that as someone is harming them.
Tende on the Sanji Chomdan the Tomer Dagamepi Tam de Son, Danzan Pami Dachamba Manwachi Chomajapati. Ya, Munitani, Sanji Jinju give it as well. Sanji Machi was Rendoa Sambato, Tingasu Hakwachi Yongdua.
So when the Buddha taught about the selflessness of the nature, of selflessness of individual and all, practicing those things, a lot of beings got realization. So seeing those beings behind Buddha's teaching, it is so amazing to see those things.
Oh, Tendichere, the Niku and the Tikor de Parche, the sound of Sari. Dame don.
So maybe for the selflessness, this might be enough for now.
Deso Jima Ngazola, Nyamlen Chebikala, Pensare, and Tatingi, they don't dare Nishajarwa.
So why I share this about the selflessness is because when you are going to, or when we are going to practice later, this might help. That's why I shared this.
Tatani Jiba Tsema Sheondi, Jiba Tsema Sedi, Dayanda Chilla Deni Chonre Seondi, Denin Tuni, Dayanda Mayamba Sedi, Kandichi Yore Sedi, Samikala Song Yore.
So the indirect valid cognition is mainly understood by the science around it. And if we say, what is the invalid cognition, then it comes here.
Dayanga Sopa Tak Shola Drosharit.
We're going in the horse.
Oh, yeah. Then Tatela Dayanda Mayamba se Tensi Tarna se Tela Sumra Shakayore.
So again, when we talk about the three signs, a correct or incorrect sign, they have three signs.
Conresiding Garvitians, Mangivitians, Martivitians, Seatere.
So these are the first one is contradictory reason, indefinite reason, and non-established reason.
Tatina Town Garvitians Seate, Sanjadovajana, Penangasu Pon de Chuchanse, Tangasu Pon di Tonica Shaki and Sewer. Then it Tapa in days, the Tapa res. Garichensen, Kajik in Jingo and Doa, Sena. Then I will tell Garvitians Secretary.
So one of the contradictory reason is the wrong or the invalid reason is that when we call form is permanence because it is changing all the time, and that's a wrong way to put it.
가르르 세디 까지마 세디 까지 인저와 렘정칸다 딱반이데 가르케레와.
Because when we say momentary and impermanence or the permanence, momentary is never a permanence, so that itself is contradictory.
다더니 망에비 댄스디 땅가서 빼 답되어라 지기다니다 지셔나 빼나 매직 단다 ngasu pena Europe ni yimbachi den dawo chikde meti chuchense dene 오로 세인데 세대 가르친 일에 세기로 자세로 임비셔로 라우샤나 데라 데네 망이 위티엔 sekse기.
So the indefinite reason, if we have to talk about it, and for example, one person comes from the Europe, and if he has a blonde hair, and another person comes and says that he must be from Russia, then that is actually indefinite. It is not certain that he is exactly from Russia, and that we call the indefinite reason.
지랍사로 가르르 세디가 자 세로이나 라시 메임비 오로시 메임비 네바 메도와 데도인데 망이비 된 sekse기.
So why? Because just having a blonde hair does not make that person a Russian. So it is indefinite reason.
대시 다더니 마드비 댄스 세들이 마드비 댄스 때 베나 다 트라나 포임비 보바다오직 마치 대추진스 되네 형 단단하지 오로세인에 라나 가르치니 세그라 가르치니래 세용도 되네 자세로 임비셔 라나 자세로래요 말어 따티 조금도 코컨세 짜나 버리도록 어때라고 제가 마드바 세기.
So another reason is non-established reason, which is if we see one person who is a Tibetan man with a black hair, but if we call him, he must be a Russian because he has a blonde hair, that means that does not make any sense because he has a black hair and he is not Russian. So that's what we call non-established reason.
어다 베드레라고 지기다네 망이 위텐스 마드 위텐스니 고알렌터 그래.
So with this kind of example, we can understand the contradictory reason, indefinite reason, and non-established reason.
다디 섬대 가서 제바 참이 된 따양다 세대 시안이 된 추니 다 따양다 마연바 세대 간디요레 세대 어디 소송요레.
So these three examples or three reason is important because if you have to understand about the indirect valid cognition, this shows that how things become invalid.
다디 양측 그 가서 가르쳐낸 것 중에 단다 바드 다 제바 참마디 시리.
So till here we are talking about the indirect valid cognition, and that shows the indirect valid cognitions here.
가자님은 이와텔라 원섬 참마셔로 근데 영어도 땅가서 참마 원섬 참마 제바 참마 니세디 다 직시 차라도 그래.
So from the second day, we practice about the direct valid cognition, and in the third one, we practice the indirect valid cognition. This is so with this we learn about direct valid cognition and the indirect valid cognition.
뭐야? 다더니 가자 간라브레시디가 원숨 참아 제바 참아니 되네 참아 마연바 원숨 참아 마연바 제바 참아야 마연바 세테 디제니테 셔고 요레 다 텔라 가리 요레시디가 ngaso jagar ge dishong na lo la jiba song yore bobi khiba nambi song na lo la jiba song yore dene yena sar dom ra ya tantela manda ba sam yong yore.
So as we discussed, there is a direct valid cognition and indirect valid cognition, and there is also other cognition that we need to understand. And from the Master of India and Tibet, they have explained it in details.
Dela kandi shongre sediga chawachugi sangge la sobi kiba mangwa chige tsama mayimbi lo dela dani yehye nala mangewa jahi lohi tesum seni nga yore.
So, in talking about the valid cognition, some masters, Chapachugi Singhi and other master, they have put it another 5, which is the subsequent cognition, or another one is correct assumption, and nangla manyepa, which is undetermined appearance, doubt, and mistaken cognition.
어떤데 저게 참아 많이 받을라 nga shagane di tongla ngosung tsama jiba tsama inhane lorik dun songge yore.
They have stated these 5, and on adding that, in addition to that, adding the direct valid cognition, direct and indirect valid cognition, that becomes the 7 kinds of knowledge.
Then sakya pantiti ti nalo ne yehye dang jahi yehye nala mangewa teso pa gani kongge tsammange hiwa tela sum yore songge yore.
So, Sakya Pandita, according to Sakya Pandita, he said there is non-realizing awareness and mistaken awareness or mistaken cognition, and doubt and direct and indirect. According to that, including that, there is 5.
다 콩거 가리 송거를 시디가 되네 마토비 로히 태섬세 참명 히바데 썸그난다고 독송요.
So he said about the non-realizing awareness, mistaken cognition or mistaken consciousness, and with the doubt, there is 3.
디 땅라 원선 참마다 제바 참만 인나네 로릭데 ngagnan다고 독송.
And in addition to that, when you add the direct and indirect valid cognition, that becomes 5.
다 드네 ngasu jawa karmapa chura jasu samarugja jasu nalola mato bilo se jiktanda sakya panditi jakhe yowate sur de jama mandus de lohi dan tesam yele los mandus dende yon de konan ge dina 참만기 로 탐제 태점당 로시 is strong is osen 참만라 니마 도만도 송게요.
And according to the Gyalwa Karmapa Chodai Gyamsu, he said that non-realization is a foundation of all, and that's why we don't have to put it aside and count for another number. So better to count that the invalid cognition, and that can be count as a doubt and mistaken cognition. So we can include in two, which can be known as one is a doubt, another is the mistaken cognition.
Di tang la tene ngosu tsama jiba tsama yeshani lor shiba tamche de jega nang do gu so lor ge song ta.
So the two valid and two invalid. Two valid is the direct valid cognition and indirect valid cognition, and the two invalid is the doubt and mistaken cognition or the mistaken consciousness. With this, there is four kind of knowledge.
Ta di kaula nanga do kan yo re se de nga su di ge me jamba chi chi da re se lab sha de de ga ra yin na shan du ge chi ro den ra wo de yang jamba chi de ma re lab na ta ya yin na ma na sa man ko ro den de yin no de ga dang bo me chi ge chi da wo re se lab sha de nga ni don la de yin ke yo na tene je yembala yensare sam yichi do ki du bi hiba de la chidang chana ta yeshu song yure yena ya jangwa chura jasu ta tana sakya banda da khons nambi tela thesam song re kare se de ga tangbo da mus thesam de yo mar de na kare chene re ro la na lamsa thesam ki yong re
So in generally, when we hear this kind of numbers, there is 4, there is 2. If we hear first, oh, there are 4 kind of knowledge, then that we assume that, oh, there is 4. And again, someone says there is 3 or 5. Then again, we think and question. So when we do like this, then it is stated that this we can call it as a assumption. But according to the Karmapa and Sakya Pandita, he said, if we assume in this way, or whenever we assume, there might come the questions. Whenever the question comes, it becomes a doubt. So we can call it doubt.
That yang jamba chik chik da wo re la wona te yena mana samba chi ro te la thesam ngongger ba se.
So, and when someone says there is 4 or 5, and another person says there is 6, then that kind of, at that time, if you feel like, is it so, or it might not be, if we have a doubt or a question, then we call it a proper doubt.
Tene lokpi hiwa se te ta nga su nasa to ku je karbo serwon thon du ge ta wa te ngos kan se ko ta doctor ke lo hi se te re to pa mare ina lokpi hiwa re do tene to pa lo hi se te kan sa ga ta yo sare sam ba ta dangzan ta re.
So the mistaken cognition is that when because of the illness or something, if we start to see everything yellow or everything white, that can be known as a mistaken cognition. But that is not the mistaken realization or mistaken understanding itself.
Ta nga su kare gore sidiga tanda lokpi hiba se de so tene pang thabiya chi ne nga su jonna yo na ya te jima merke wa che thap ke yore.
So when we have this mistaken cognition or mistaken idea about things, we can actually correct it.
Perna dangzan ta ware dangzan te dagme to bi hirab gomne pang thap ke yore.
So for example, we have the sense of clinging to the I, but when we practice the emptiness or when we practice the selflessness, then we can eradicate the idea of selfishness or self.
Tsawa nyomo wa te so 가르세디가 자와 강아 투그레세디가 당전을 투고 거리. 근데 용디가 녀모와 탐지 자와 당전대 제용나 되는 녀모와 잠바티서 랑젠 그 탑고요.
So the idea of I or idea of clinging to the I becomes the root cause of every sort of negative actions. So when we can eradicate the idea of I or the ego of the self, then we can eradicate the other afflictions as well.
가자 담보 가서 참마시하고 되게 참마 희바 구바시에 깎대라. 되니 로양 답바디 로션체 로데 뽕탑 그레스. 로션체 로디 로양 답바디 뽕탑 그 말에서 간세디 지금 히럽 겹지로서 가장 한마 즉시 디 난간디 직발이.
So when we discussed about this valid cognition or the epistemology few days before, we said that because of the right view, we can dispel the wrong view or eradicate the wrong view. And this is the example like that.
대변나 ndendishigre di kona kansong sediga tanda 가장 파지 신이 나면 잠깐만 파지 쉬어서 말해. 나세 다세지요 차비주라 세바세티 레봉거레스 세바티 레오나 열때레 쫀지요나 쫀텐 통고 말해세 참만 남들은 드리시 송어레 세비 쫀노 드버시스.
So for example, maybe we have said this before or not, but when there comes the idea of I or me, that drags the desire. And when we have that desire, at that time, even if we see faults of people, but if we have a strong desire toward that person, then we don't see the wrong sides of them, or we don't see the faults in them.
페나 잘라다와 옛날에 조모다와 옛날에 전에 세바디 흉 첨보요나 대대 껴요난 통로에 그 말.
So, for example, if we like something, some goods, if we like it really very, very much, then we don't see the fault of it. Just like that, if we like some friends and if we have someone who we love at that time, we don't see the faults in them.
다 전에 잘라 옛날에 조모 옛날에 당원 세바 요바 찍라 진이 껴한테서 통한데 세바디 파파 매줘야디 돈달라 몸이 세바디 러시 미김성 그리.
So then later, when we understand them more and more, we start to see the faults in them. But why is that? Because the idea that you have carried was in desire. We had the perception through the desire. That's why we couldn't see the reality. That we can understand it as a wrong idea or wrong cognition, mistaken cognition.
근데 제원아 때네 도착 돼서 망고지 lokpi hibayimba 하고도 그래.
So when we see the negative perversion, we can understand that these are the wrong cognition or the mistaken cognition.
지망에 하고마서 약보쇼신 독자나 배 독자를 독세지용 거로.
So later, when we see the reality or when we see more and more, at that time we might feel like, I thought this person or this thing is so good, but actually it's so bad or it's not so good.
대나 셰당 양테리 컨트롤 사용이 깔라 파쇼될 연대 연 통로 책말.
And just like that, even in case of anger, when we have anger toward someone, then at that time, even that person has some good qualities, we never see it.
파쇼될 견 침보면은 견 침보도 잔니요 데리로 통역을.
Even the other person does not have a big mistakes or the big fault, we still see it as a very big fault.
Tende chingwandi ngasu jilla yobi danzan tang, docha tang, kontro ndeso, tene pang tabya de konso lokpi hiba chagdo yonsangiri song, o tende song yore.
So, because the idea of I, idea of desire, idea of anger, all these things we can eradicate or we can expel it because these are the wrong cognition or the wrong idea.
konso lokpi hiba mayana pang tabko mare.
If the I, and if the desire, if the anger, they stands firmly, or if they truly exist, then there is no way we can eradicate it.
대양 참만 남들은 배 야고지 송어래. 너희 선쇼 매번은 대봉 왔는 네 마이.
So, in Pramana Bhartika, again states that if these things are actually solid, then there is no way to eradicate it.
된디리. 되네. 땅 가서 파 드바테서 pon식 소수 결라 깨 고야가 람데. 되네. 참마 로양 탁바지 연구요래. 단디 lokpi 히바데 땅 갑디 짤통ken가. 갑두고 갈바레 동ken가. 양 탁비 참마지 연구요래.
So, to eradicate this sort of ideas or mistaken views, we have to have the direct or we have to have the valid cognition. When we have the valid cognition, then we can eradicate these wrong ideas.
페나 잠바다 현재 대소 곰나 페 면석의 펜 토그리 소소 특별 첨벌라야 레벨라 펜 토그리 소소 근처라 펜 토그리 샘전전라 펜 토그리 하자 약거리 이나요 방샤 녀모 지 무슨 매바소야라 시럽대 고요레 말도 되네 현재 다 잠바 지위 빵 토고요 말에.
For example, having a love and kindness that really makes us the practitioner of Mahayana, that can be really beneficial to oneself and others. But in terms of eradicating the wrong views, we need to have a proper understanding or proper wisdom. Without wisdom, we cannot eradicate the wrong views. And only having love and kindness does not help us to eradicate or dispel our wrong views.
Sama namdrega nalola dendish sonre chamso mondang garme she hyende niba chache mense chamba dan hyanje la soba di hyende niba se de danzan dan kaptu go tene garwa chayo mares tende yonde go danzan de so chamba hyanje jiwi pong to ko mares sonre danzan dan chamba hyanje de so kaptu garwa chayo mares.
And also in Tsema Rigpa or Tsema Namdil, which is Pramana Vartrika, it says that all this love and kindness itself is in a way opposite to the idea of selfishness or the selflessness.
다 참만 남들 그 나로라 텐디 그 첨부 망고 요래 단다 나라 참마쇼 효송디게 때 대소 기능 솔라 증우잖아 펜토 요기니 인제레 차니 대소 시와yen.
So even in Pramana Vatrika, there are so many examples and reasonings out there. I have shared a few with you, so this can be beneficial for you.
다 드니 가상하는 컨트란소 세디가 녀모마 대소 카히치 단당이 lokpi 히바레 세 녀모마 카히치 무트나다고 직트란소
So yesterday that I thought if I can let you know a little bit of negative or afflictive emotions.
당아서 너처당 셰당 세디가 답대오다고 파시산 거지레 삼근도 단디 공대 대시 쇼가다리 만나요 다 배차망 우스사리 전주가 나로라 망어 요레 덴디엔디가 직사리 삼근도.
And as desire and anger is a little easy to understand, and we have shared a bit about it, and also the Bodhicharya Avatara has stated a few verses on it, and I think this might be okay with the desire and anger.
다 얘나야 안도르디 로직시나 ngomba kunti 나나 측지거디 기침보라고 통고요. 가르송을 쓰는 도차 강샤나 감선비 지스 차파스 감선비 사치 되솔라 파스바텔라 도차 세그레스 텐다오디 줄라요 소나 레 통모 모티 소나.
So, in that, even though we have shared about the desire, if we summarize it or share it a bit on it, there is a beautiful verse in the Pramana Samuchaya where he said that there is said that the desiring the three worlds.
텐다위 도차 세티 파마토나 테네 angkorwa dunga garangshen dela jorkare songaytela teni dunga kebi lichen no songre.
So if one does not eradicate, if one does not dispel the desire, then that will bring, or that can become a cause of all the suffering.
Teni control nimig tang control ngowati chidane yawa karmabe chonju zobi leo chatsare tinalo ne ta mawo son sare ina kamdar ya ngomba kanti nalo lan dordi chi yobati shina control kanshena semchen namda dungar gini gi chu namda konni nar sembati songre.
So, talking about the anger, His Holiness Karmapa is teaching the Bodhicharya Avatara, and he had stated many verses and many teachings on the anger. But still, if we share a little bit from the Pramana Samuchaya, then it says it is having the hurt, or it's a wrong idea to really harm others and oneself.
Ngomba kanti nalo la rikpar mandi wada songre te kansong kar sidiga control sana teni kiputo chuni cha yo maresi teni be market baro ran cha ndu koresi o teni song yore.
And in Pramana Samuchaya, it says that when you have anger, that makes your mind unstable all the time, and that makes you sad, or that makes your mind agitated all the time, which leads to suffering.
전주 소비 레가 나로라 대여와 대키란서 즉사래 니코라 쿠라 해가 말했어.
And in Bodhicharya Avatara, it says that when you have anger, even you cannot have a good sleep.
되네. 니퍼초비 텐시비 리천세니 다 컨트롤 세디오노나 다 텔라테니 오네 타니 단 축바 효리야 아니 소초야 직접마야라 소바다 니바 잡치모 뭐 용거래 손 어디서.
So when you have anger, it becomes a source of all the wrongdoings, because you start fighting, you start harming others, and that becomes a source of all the negativities.
되네. ngāgyar kāngshēnā njīk tsōla tāwāla tēne sēm kāngwās ngāgyar sēyā tē ngā sāmbē kōnō tēla tēne sōsō tē shiwa yāng sāmbā rāgu tā tēndrī chīkla ngāgyar sēgirē sōng.
And talking about the pride, we take ourselves as a superior, and we show our haughtiness.
Tē tāwī ngāgyar tēla tēne kārī yōngkōrē sēdī yāla māgī wātāng tēne kōwā lā yīnjāng kīyā tē sō mayongwa, janla magiwa yongwa, then ninjong mayongwa, then the nimgyoreson.
So when you have a pride, then you become disrespectful to the people, and you don't have any what do we call renunciation. Sorry, and when you have a pride, then you become disrespectful to people. At the same time, there is no desire, or there is no willingness to be free from this suffering or free from the samsara, because you are thinking yourself as a superior.
The chonju gna nyomo wa ngarger seti pangores. Yina yo semchen tamjik don ngi che tapkareda samba. Semchen tamjik don da ngi cheke yenda samba. De tawi ngarger de ke gore songro. Deso yo nanga chigre.
So, but in Bodhicharya Avatara, Santideva said, we have to eradicate the idea of pride, or we have to dispel our pride, but at the same time, we have to have the pride of being able to help the sentient beings. We have to think that I can help or I can benefit sentient beings. We have to carry that idea.
특과 정부 출라 냠는 시비 깔라 강이 강체 특구마레 잔다나 티 길룩 레로 시그리 덴리 깔라요 네 체특그레다 네 제게 연다 삼바고티 영케 쳔보레도.
So also in Mahayana practice, if we say, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, then that becomes a cause to our downfall. So we have to have a greater confidence in ourselves. So we need to think that I can do for sentient beings, I can do for myself. We have to have this level of confidence.
덴리 지그레 다 파체 덴리 지나 릭사레 삼게도.
So this is it. Maybe we cannot.
땡니 단다 추니 참만 거 꼬르디 추니 레옹레. 참마마인 비히바샤바 네 추니 레옹노레.
So the invalid cognition or the idea of wrong view comes because of the invalid ideas or invalid thoughts.
다더니 참미 르바샤비 까라 카상 정가 양다 마임바 니세 지요레 공도 쉬레 데 개첨보라고 지그레
So in valid cognition, it is very important to understand that statement of proof, the right statement of proof and the wrong statement of the proof.
디나니 정가 양다 세데 간데지 고레세데 초추 단 캬바니 조니 무슬라브니 데네 잔라 파 고아 약보식 제비 ngakdela 데네 정가 라크요레
So if you have to make it easier to understand, then the right statement of proof is something which is backed by the relevance to the subject and the forward pervasion.
Dela kyawa joba sigri. Da dondang la phongo ma tawa yinba tengo chani, dani kora da wikyaw dani delan tacha sigri, taka ni, dangwa kyawa di jo kiyori. Da kyawa di jo yongi kaw la, gajig ma dani ngaan rongkan chi yana, ma tawa yin gore da si, dangwa de lap kiri.
So, for example, when we understand that everything is momentary, then that gives us the idea of impermanence. When we understand that everything is momentary, that becomes the impermanence, and impermanence comes because that is momentary, which is the forward pervasion. So this is how we understand it.
시작해요.
So, for example, there is a lightning from the sky. When we see this, lightning is momentary and it is impermanence.
드네 디지털라 가서 폰원데요. 까지 근적으로 열다 세운데 되게 쇼츠 좋고요.
So, if we put into our physical form itself as well, it is also changing every single moment. When we understand this, then we can understand the impermanence.
다 된잉어스 라원데 가래 고용사래. 드네 폰 다 된데 폰 맞다 와렌도 삼바지 고용하렌도.
So when we have this idea, then we realize that everything is impermanence, or that person or that thing is impermanence.
된데 영원데 서도도 지나 간단까지 마야나 맞다 와미 캬거레스 페나 로다 거레스. 드네 폰원데야 까지 말해다 세워 측대래.
So to summarize it, basically whatever is momentary is impermanence, just like the lightning from the sky and just like a form which is changing all the time.
측대 무스 차바당 촉추죠 거래나 슈글라 폰원 맞다 와임베티 땐도.
So when we understand the word clearly, then later we understand the essence or the nature of itself as an impermanence.
데라 정가 양다가 세그리.
And that's what we call the statement of the right proof, or the right statement of the proof.
다 측데라 마송하다고 용송하다고 너나 마상와다 락송하다고 된데 정소나 측견 세그리 데라. 데네 돈 노르다요나 돈견 세그리. 데니 동어레 측데세 마송와 용송와 된데 정나 찰락 정소나 측견 라그리.
And then when the word is too much words or too much less, too much less or too much words, the both are inappropriate words.
돈다 그 돈이 노르다요나 돈견 라그리.
So if the meaning is mistaken, then that's a mistake in the meaning.
다 측견다 돈 근견 된데 요바지게나 데라 정가 양다 많이 봐세그리. 정가 따나세그리.
And when the word is mistaken and also the meaning is mistaken, that we call the wrong statement of the proof.
된데 지원데 다 가서 간차서 원섬 tsema jipa tsema yangda ma yinpa nyi zheshi. Di tang la drumga yangda yinpa chikda yangda ma yinpa nyi chi. Da truk di ro songa.
So altogether, there is a direct valid cognition and direct invalid cognition, indirect valid cognition and indirect invalid cognition. That is 4. And adding to that, the statement of proof and true refutation is 2, and wrong statement of proof and false refutation, adding that it becomes 6.
가장 이니만 이발라 참이 정그 조샤드 서로 도도 지용이 깔라 게요레 세디. 디나니 트룩 조요. 다 니데리. 니데 건세디 선전 양다 선전 따나 세디. 탄결 양다 탄결 따나 세나야 르크리.
Sorry, I already said it. Now, in the second day, I said that there are 8 cognition, or the 8 knowledge about the Tsema. And we gave the 6th example now, and adding to that, that is a Sunjin Yangdag, which means the true refutation. If that is a true refutation, there is a true refutation and one is the false refutation. With that, it becomes 8.
And then I just. Ah, yeah. That tangier said the country said the Tandangasu the Kong the Chixias on. Then just zero in be Europe magic. Jambachik Travati. They can't eat it. 디 오로스니래 라브레 디 오로스네 연데 가르치는 오로스를 자 새로 임비셔 라서 데 망이 댄스시 리시지 공도요 다 쪼바쪼비 깔라 잠바치기 던지지 라브셔나 다 데라 탄결세데 동초고요.
So another one is to go to the other extreme, exceeding the point actually, that means. So for example, when we see a person with a blonde hair and other person says he is from Russia, and that does not really supports the fact that that person is exactly from the Russia, and that's what we call to go to the other extreme.
다 데라 페나 여러분의 연비면 따세로직 주장스 대 오로시면 마타 제설랑 그러 가르치니 세그러 제시스나 가르치니 그 따세로 연비셔라 라브레 따세로랜도 와 라브레 세원데 따세로 있는 오로스인데 오로시면 인 고 말이 트랭크레 있는 그런 거 너무 고 라브셔라 딱코 카타야 메와라고 차로 그래
So also another example is if someone is from Europe and that has a blonde hair, and if you say he is from Russia, then their question comes there, why? And the first person says because he has a blonde hair. But then again another person asks, is it so? Having a blonde hair, having a blonde hair makes the person Russian? Then that question comes, and it is how the debate goes on in a practice actually.
단결 세용대가 소수 시샤바 단단 노르송아 던지라 케랑가 라반 대연한 대리차로 레다 세니 랍기요레 돈달라.
So the idea of to go to the other extreme is that when you say this is the idea, then there comes another question saying that this might not be so, and this is called to go to the other extreme.
디 측설라 벤나 단다 케랑 파치 라요나면 벤나 단다 간 라브레시디가 여러분의 임비 메타세로 잔티 추진 라브라 오로시면 바 타르스랍기도 타르스에디 측텔라 때네 조어디 텔 타는겨를 랍고요.
So basically, when we say that one European man, when he comes with a blonde hair, then if we make a strong statement that that person is from Russia, saying that word itself is something which goes to the other extreme.
다더니 디깔라 르파 동탄도 노르소나 파 랍탄도 노르소나 데나 탄제양다 마이바 아세리.
So when we have a mistaken way to express the idea or the logic, then that becomes the wrong way to go to the other extreme.
다디 ngasu tsami josha tensikripi josha getdi 다저래 원섬 양다 따나니 지파 양다 따나니 중가 양다 따나니 탄제 양다 따나니 다 get디 차상 노르디 로신조요.
So with this we complete the 8th idea of direct valid cognition, indirect valid cognition, or direct invalid cognition and indirect invalid cognition, right statement of proof and wrong statement of proof, and true refutation and wrong refutation. With this, in a nutshell, we went through all the 8 cognition or the 8 ideas.
다디 노니 원섬 참마다 지바 참마세디 소소 랑 돈듯이 직된 옛날에 추구적 옛날에 냠래 옛날에 대 소수 돈듯이 대 착을 성구요.
So direct and indirect valid cognition is shared for the sake of oneself, whether be it for the mundane practices or whether be it for the dharma practices. It is applied for the self-understanding.
Drunga tang thanjo se ti jan la rokpa chitap kare songyo.
And the statement of proof and the true refutation is for the sake of others.
Drunga ke tesam ki do ba de tesam pha me ba che ne sama ke tap kare songyo.
And the true statement of proof helps others to clear their doubts.
Thanjo la tene phaso te loktok chong da yo ba. Yana labta nor songa. Deso la zobchu yak tap kare songyo.
So the true refutation that helps others to deal with the wrong idea that they carry.
O te tawi ta ten sigri josha gyabo te tsama kuntin rawo yana tsama kunti gi lego tang ngonsam lego nana ngonsam sheyore lego tang nana ngonsam sheyore tsama kunli tiwi.
So that completes the 8 ideas that we discussed. And first one in the Pramana Samuchaya, it says that the direct valid cognition.
Tsama kunli tiwi lego nibi nana la jibak tsama sheyore.
And the second chapter is the indirect valid cognition.
Tene tsama kunli tiwi lego simbi nana la drumga tang tharngyo ni sheyore.
And in the third chapter, there comes the statement of proof and the statement of the proof and the refutation.
Desu kaula churwin doba desu giba kone re chene tene pha gak tene khonang garang ma ashani songyor.
So in the third chapter, there comes a lot of details about the non-Buddhist idea of statement of proof, and there is lots of debates, and there is clearance there.
That sama namder tela lego sheyore lego ji koram driktang tela songza mandawa ni yor.
So in Pramana Vartika, there is a 4 chapters, and they have a different way to express it as well.
Tangasu tsama rikjong gyanso tarna Karmapa chura gyanso song tsama rikjong gyanso tarna lego nibati ngonsam lego re ti nala ngonsam shakyor.
And according to the Karmapa, the second chapter is the direct valid cognition.
Lego sambade randan lego re ti nala jibak tsama shakyor.
And in the third chapter, there is indirect valid cognition.
Lego shivade jandan lego re ti nala la drunga tang sunjeni shakyor.
And in the fourth chapter, there is a statement of proof and its consequence or the refutation.
Ta tende chingode tanda ngaso shya josha teso tsami jong nani pe josha kichihu rang yemba hakko thukyor.
And when we see all these texts and books, that shows that the idea of valid cognition is very important.
Ta parche tende rang chinan riksare diga ta tsami kordi chok chingne samla dana shedra ga bogu tesu lo chigla jaya rawo chik parche chik ngasu nyama jela chik shet sarwa rawo chik jongso.
So as time is also in the verge of ending, then normally what we practice in Sheda for 1 year, we try to in some ways explain in 4 days, and almost we completed it.
Jima kiransu tsama ta nyonsena tsama ta nyonse.
And later if someone asks you, have you practiced the Tsema, then at that time maybe you can say, yes, I have practiced it.
Dere. Ta tene try.
Then if you have a questions, please ask.
I will translate. We're here. Thank you very much for your teachings. And now you just totally destroyed all my conceptions because I'm a psychologist. And what should I do now? Because all psychologist science is dependent on the terms of ego, selfness, or things like that. Maybe you can give me some piece of advice? Because I still very much want to help people. Help people. Thank you very much. Is it clear? Yeah.
Tatepe yakore. Karere sediga ngasu da siye dan kanza siye dame siye tisu tan dak siye de kanri mewa yin. Dame siye de tan la kanri pap go yuwa de kuwa yakpo leon ikaw la ta semchen zhang ton siye dan. Ne semchen tamchik ton siye tisu kanri da yonko yore sambachi yonko re. Di rongsheng lewe ka tuwa chikre. Ta tela karir sidi mata da sidi yume mata mahi pi tani jan la rokpa chi. Ngi sanji kuma to sona chan. Tel teni sonum tso sakhi yore. Teni tashi chi yona da sidi nyeki mewa ha kwa ni de gom jamna ihi tso sakhi songo yore. Teni chi yondi ga di sonum tso sakhi di jitu kukab 이히 초사에도 냠작 갑래 대갑 소소 소소치니 삼나타야래.
That's very good to destroy your idea. And when we have a idea of the self, others, this and that, having that idea of self and others, if we, without checking that, if there is a true nature of self or true nature of others, if we do the good things for others or having that benefactory thoughts and helping others, that will accumulate merit. But when you check and when you see the essence that there is nothing as such of self or the individual or this and that, then you accumulate the wisdom. So this is a gradual process of accumulating merits. So either way, it's good.
At the time of death, or as death is approaching, what is a way to best break the clinging to self? To break the clinging to self at the time of death or as death approaches, what is the best way, best method or suggestion?
다 당전 깨야데 매치 소소 마히만라 뇽르 땅트웨디 기체모레. 데니 This young Tantaviona Setela Kang Kom Yong de Zu Shivikalayang, Denda which Chayong Great, and the end on the Sindela, Tisayovi Cup de la Des, Yamne, Dame Cortes or Gom Yagatiso, that Kichayu de Derare.
So basically, having the idea of self, we have to practice to diminish it when we are alive right now. At the moment of death, the idea, whatever we have practiced, that becomes very strong. Or if you have clinging to self in a very strong way, then that becomes even stronger at the moment of death. So it's all about the habit that we said. So it is better to practice the nature of selflessness when we have a time and when we do the meditation. This can really help.
Ngarang la sonna ta lo chimba chada yore lo inchidana lo tukchirev den chak yore tende yong di tanda tam shiwi kautela dangzan yong ra yong ag chede ta tanda ne tese dame teso chik margum na yong sa mari ta sambata hoji ta tanda margum bachi sanye hirambi kaula ta hoptu chik cheye se na kali khaba chakare. And if
I have to give my own example, now I am 67 years old, and nowadays I feel like if I don't practice the nature of selflessness right now, then I might not be able to practice it at the moment of death, and that kind of thought really hits me.
Oh yeah.
Is it then in the time I have left before I leave this body, is it best then, of course I do Dorje Sempa for cleaning, and is it better to focus then on Yidam or on Lakdong? Does Geshe-la have some suggestion? He knows me, so I take seriously what he suggests.
That Nidana Shishi Nilu Mali Wan Kimbi Yishingawa Nasola Nasutsavi Lama Yawa Karmapa was Musjuk do the Surik de Korana Kandishina the Yakre. Then he carries on the Tetelava Yomari.
As we have a great honorable master, Karmapa himself here, so whatever His Holiness suggests, if you do it accordingly, that will be the best idea.
Me Naranga Tansa Chanchu Sem Koreanare, Tonya Tavi Koreanare, Mummy course Tesola, the Kantata was Shitsata was she or then Tanda Konanda Wayana Dikala Yore, then the on the Teso Le Lausangala Mixer Manga say Yomari. Mixer Kam Manga saying Allah is Kame.
So, as I was teaching about the bodhicitta and emptiness and selflessness, I think you were present there at that time also. So, I don't have any extra words beside that.
Tashidale Venerable, thank you for your teaching. May it ripen to fruition for all of us. I would like to ask maybe a technical question. If you could
explain a little bit more about when we discuss impermanence, about the momentary change. Momentary change. So since we already learned that there are no small particles, the smallest particles and smallest particles of time. So for example, when we imagine a ball, it doesn't matter how big or small, going from A to B, it travels a distance, but to imagine how it goes from A to B, usually we think in steps, it moves, but actually in this teaching, steps don't exist. So how can we deepen our understanding on this kind of movements or the flow, which actually is impermanent everywhere around us, but we usually think about steps. And I don't think that's the correct way, and I just I feel like it would help.
Okay. Can you please little clarify it, because your audio was not that audible in a way.
So imagining a ball, big, small, from A to B, we can have steps as it moves. But since the steps could be smaller, smaller, smaller until infinity, until there are really no steps in a way, I'm not sure if I understand. The flow basically is continuous, but to imagine the continuity is almost impossible, thinking it that way. Yeah.
So you basically means what should we imagine in the process?
Yeah. How to change our way of thinking about it.
How to have a real thinking.
Yeah, you can ask like that.
Te kare laukiyo na perna chonchon ne chenpa ngyur se di ngubu kanya na pengyo ka rikpi kaula kuwa lenki yorwa. Di kaula dutun chik pa ngakpin tsabla dutun mangwa chik sarki. Yang dini riri ngakpin tsabla mangwa ki dindi chini yar pek yorwa sani di pengyo ka rikpi kaula sheya di dirwa. Da nga su di mayenba dutun se di kandi chikla labki yore, kandi chikla dutun se giri se di da nga su ngomba nzo chawa yana, ngomba nzo kaya nyezer girdar tawa miki chik thong tsam kaya dani dar chik di chat dan lagu dani yang di yang chik di chat dan lagu dani re 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 chi yang diga dani charab girdar dan la dutun chik Diga naji chini tani te dana chakdar chik dendri seni tati kila kali yonjiri. Ta dendri chini yaa gyurni shak yore, te maa gocha gyabi kala te go yore, te kirang chawa te tini kanyang ni hakwa maa song sirwa.
Normally, small particles collecting and adding off, it goes bigger and bigger. It's understandable. And if you, according to the Abhidharma Kosha, that the particle, when it becomes very small, I'm not really good at explaining it. I'm so sorry for that, because that's too technical for me, for myself, not for Guru. When that is the very smallest of the particles, when that particle collects in 7 particles of that becomes another particle, and that becomes bigger in that way. So this is the process that happens, but actually I didn't get your question according to him.
다 파체 karmacha khalhakan ros. 다 tunan riksarego.
So we are 10 minutes late already, so I think this is it.
Sunande tamche sigmani tuni nivi dana panshe Yegana che balwan tuba yesivi sunin duwa duwa shu Chancho sincho rinpo che ma ke bana Jiba nyamba meba don koni kondun bewa shu Gewan de gewo kan sunama yishi sozo hin sunama yishi le shon Tamba kunyi toba shu. Oh yeah.